verse to be included in the text, as these translations predate the manuscripts used to take the verse out, to delete the verse. Right, so we can look at it and say, now hang on a minute, should these verses be in? Well, they were in the early translations. The early translations were before Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. So Sinaiticus and Vaticanus have left them out. So which one's wrong? Well, obviously Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. Right, and we can safely put them back in and say, yes, they should be there. But there's more. Right, the Church Fathers. Now, we refer to the Church Fathers as the patristic or fatherly testimony of the early church. Now, what's this about? Well, you need to get a good understanding of this. In the first 4 centuries of the church, certain men came to prominence as great leaders, preachers, and men of God. Now, there was a lot of them, and we know who they were, and we know exactly when they lived, we know where they lived, and we know a great deal about them. We have extant evidence about them that we can check on. Right. They left us with a vast number of written documents, such as sermons, books, comments, letters, etc., and many of these contain direct quotes from the Greek New Testament that they used in their day. Now, you won't know a lot of these people, but these are great men of history: Tertullian, Irenaeus, Apollodorus, Origen, Clement of Alexandria. These are just some of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And these 6 alone have supplied us with 30,147 scripture sightings. Now, this is all before Westcott and Hort's texts that they say are closest to the originals, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus. Now, these men lived before that, and these men quoted the scripture they had before that. Just these men, 30,147 scripture sightings that are extant that we have. Right, Dean Bergen, I've mentioned him before. He was a scholar at the time that Westcott and Hort were doing all this, and he was against it all. And in his study on the patristic testimony of the Church Fathers, has extrapolated over 87,000 scripture sightings. Right, now is that evidence? Of course it's evidence. That's a vast, absolutely vast evidence. Because we can be sure of when these men lived, we can see the value of their writings in establishing which text of the New Testament was used in early church history. We've only got to look at these scripture sightings, of which we've got up to 87,000. Now, we'll never look at that many, of course, but men in the past have gone through and looked at them and said, all right, where do they fit? Well, where Sinaiticus and Vaticanus differ from them, Sinaiticus and Vaticanus are more likely to be wrong than right, aren't they? So, one of the main criteria used to justify Westcott and Hort's new Greek critical text was method 3, the historical dating method. They claimed, because the Greek manuscripts they relied on, and they were Vaticanus B and Sinaiticus Aleph and B's AD, all from the Alexandrian A textual stream, which they called the neutral text. Right, remember they said it's a neutral text. They claimed that they were older than the Byzantine or the TR, stream of textual evidence, and that this then dismissed the Byzantine stream of evidence from consideration. They said, because these are older, forget the rest. All right. They therefore set this evidence aside as being further from the originals and so having less authority. We now see the importance of the patristic testimony of the early church fathers. They wrote before the manuscripts used by Westcott and Hort were written. Right, so we can look back and say, now hang on a minute, you say these are closer to the original, so they've got to be closer, be right, and got to be better, but we can go back further than that, right? If we find that their writings include portions of Scripture that are not in Westcott and Hort's neutral text, but are in the Byzantine stream of textual evidence, or the TR, this is weighty evidence indeed for these portions to be included in the text. So, once again, let's turn to 1 John 5:7, because this is a verse that has been taken out that we think is an important verse. Do the patristic writings support this verse? Yes, indeed they do. Not only with individual church fathers, but also with collective council. Now, we've looked back and we've said, should this verse be taken out or should it be left in? What do the patristic fathers say? Well, we look and we see all of these that I've got here. You won't know them, but we've got them. We know who they are. We know what they've written, and we know that they included it in. Right, now they wrote before Westcott and Hort's Vaticanus and Sinaiticus and Beza, the Alexandrian stream of text was put together, and they included in. And then Liber Apologetics, now that was a manuscript that we have, and it was written in AD 350, and it has it in. And then the Council of Carthage in 415, it includes it in. And so with this weight of very early evidence for this verse, the scholar who takes it out is taking a tremendous responsibility on himself. Nobody who looks at it reasonably and logically would say this verse should be taken out. In fact, they would say we better be very careful to include this verse in. We must also note that in looking at the patristic testimony of the early church fathers, there is another important aspect to this whole issue. It's the geographical aspect. More weight can be given to the evidence of those church fathers who came from the Asia Minor area or the other areas where the New Testament writings originated, where they came from originally. They carry more weight than those fathers who were far removed from these areas. To understand this aspect is to gain a perspective of how this evidence is weighed. What evidence is worth more than other evidence? A writer from the Asia Minor area carries greater weight, as this is where the bulk of the New Testament originated. Anyone who writes from that area was closer to the originals, so they carry more weight. A writer from the area of Egypt carries far less weight, as no book of the New Testament originated in Egypt. So, which cities actually received the original manuscripts? Well, they were all in the region of Asia Minor, Syria, right, Greece and Rome. In Asia Minor, John, Galatians, Ephesians, Colossians, 1 and 2 Timothy, Philemon, 1 Peter, 1, 2 and 3 John, Jude and Revelation. They were all from Asia Minor, and that's where they originated. Luke may have been Rome, and Acts may have been Rome. 2 Peter was possibly Rome. Matthew was probably written from Palestine. James probably wrote from Palestine. Rome, Mark, Romans and Hebrews, we know we're very sure were written in that area. From Greece, 1 and 2 Corinthians, Philippians, 1 and 2 Thessalonians and Titus. So we see that they all came from that area. And anybody of the church fathers who comes through that area, we can say, yes, he probably will be closer to the original, so his evidence carries more weight. So let's